Move on to Ashley Amourgis. Ashley is a Senior and Research Extension Officer with Southern Farming Systems, and she's been working on our deep nitrogen project. So over to you, Ash, to give us an overview.
Thanks, Michelle. So as we sort of discussed in the video, we're looking at these trials to sort of try and see if we can increase nitrogen use efficiency by deep banding urea or a portion of the crop's requirements at sowing, and hopefully reducing those sort of potential losses that we might get in season when we're top dressing. So it's the third year of trials. The first two were under a DELP funded project. Once that funding came to an end, we were lucky enough to sort of source some more funding, and through the Smart Farms Small Grants project, so through the Australian Government and National Landcare, we've been able to get some more funding to continue that work. So we've got more trials in again this year, and planning to do some again next year as well.
Fantastic. So from the videos, it shows us that the top dressing of urea has done a good job on the crop. But what's your feeling about the combination of deep banding urea and top dressing? Is it going to be better to just do top dressing alone, or do we need both combinations?
Yeah, so visually there are some really good results now from the top dressed urea, and you can sort of see them definitely in the video too. I was looking at some photos and things yesterday as well when I was sort of just doing some prep for this, and I found some quite interesting photos which I thought I might show you guys too. And it just sort of shows some of the different treatments and things, and how we go through different from the deep banded and how it's sort of progressed with the top dressed as well. So if I can get this to work, I might share my screen. So is that up for everyone there?
We can see that for you. If you want to go into the slideshow.
Yeah, cool. So that first picture there is from 21st of July. So at this point, we hadn't had anything top dressed. You can see there's 100 kilos and 0 deep banded at sowing. So this is just when the crop's gone into stem extension. So as I said, nothing's been applied yet, but you can see a huge difference between those two. I don't know if the quality is sort of that good in the photo there, but yeah, you can see big differences in the colours there between the 0 and the 100. So there's obviously been quite a bit taken up already sort of early in the season. And I guess it was a really low, this is from Inverleigh, so it was a really low starting nitrogen there. So it does sort of go to show, how that early sort of nutrition has played a role there too. This next one, again, these photos aren't the best sort of quality. I really tried to zoom in on some drone shots that were sort of looking at the whole trial, but you can see those differences, that sort of step in colour again. This was when they went to sort of 31 to 32 growth stage. And we've got the 100, the 50 and the 0 kilos of N deep banded. And like I said, you sort of can see those differences in colour there too. This was probably about 3 weeks after we'd top dressed. So half of the plots within each of these have been top dressed and the other 2 haven't. So at this point, a couple of weeks after that application, we haven't really seen any big differences yet. And then the last photo, this was taken on the 3rd of September. The plants were probably around GS39 then, and you can definitely see how that top dressed urea has had a bit of an impact there by now. So these ones down this end were starting at 0, so they had nothing deep banded, and that's been top dressed now. They've all been top dressed up to the same amount. So this one here, which had zero deep banded has had more top dress than say this one down here, which had 100 kilos deep banded. And you can see like visually they are getting to look more relatively similar in sort of colouring, that sort of thing at the moment. So yeah, I guess I was just looking at those photos and I thought it was a really good sort of visual representation of what we've been doing and what we sort of have seen so far. So I guess coming back to the question more directly, yeah, the idea of doing this probably was to only deep band a portion of the crop requirements at sowing. My sort of feeling would be that a combination is probably the way to go. I don't think we could replace any top dressing by deep banding all your requirements at sowing. That's sort of not what this is really aiming to do. If you've got a really low starting nitrogen, as you can sort of see there, it's sort of obvious that early nitrogen, if you're not planning to go out with early top dress, then there can be some benefits with that there.
And I
guess
got a question for you there, Ash. So Lockie, ask away.
Hey Ash, looks good. And also those drone shots are really good to visually see what's going on. It's fantastic. I was just wondering, in the last couple of years, and then what we're expecting for this year, are we seeing anything in the difference between the depth of urea? And are you putting it in just with the MAP as well that you're putting in at sowing, or is it separate too?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We are doing it at depths. So the first 2 years of trials we did pretty much 3, 7 and 12 centimetres below the seed. So that 3 or that 2 to 3 was pretty much sitting at that MAP level, and then we sort of dropped below that. This year we've just gone to the 3 and the 7 centimetres. We sort of found the 12 was almost, from the last 2 years of trials, was almost reaching it a little bit too late. So it was going into more grain protein than into yield. So we sort of just dropped that one out to continue it. I haven't actually seen, like, visually this year, so far I haven't seen huge differences between the depths. The main visuals that I've seen is rate. So I guess, yeah, it'll be interesting to see when we sort of come through to harvest and that sort of thing and get some yield and that off it, whether there has been differences by depth there. But visually, there certainly hasn't really been a visual difference by depth at the moment.
Yeah, cool. And so, and do you think that it's is it depth that is changing things, or is it distance from the seed? I'm just thinking with those seed hawks that have got the fert offset from where the seed is. Yes, or is it that distance, or do we actually need to get it lower as well?
No, I think it's probably more a distance thing. And I guess there are differences, like there's been work done with sort of mid-row banding compared to directly below the seed and that sort of thing, and it probably just comes back to that root growth and where it's sort of moving. But it probably, yeah, I would think, I'm not 100% sure to be honest, but I think it would be more of a distance sort of thing than a depth necessarily.
There's a question in the chat box. Has there been any establishment issues with high rates of N at sowing?
We haven't seen any, no. So the top we went to this year was 100 kilos of N banded, and yeah, we haven't seen any establishment issues with that.
And have we, has UAN been compared to urea for its response?
No, we've only looked at urea actually.
Any more questions that's coming through? As I said, feel free to unmute your video, and then we'll get you to ask your question. You can have that chat with Ash.
Just a quick comment, sorry, and we did it for the first time this year, put some urea up front, and it's really nice that you don't have to get it, when it gets really wet at the start, you don't have to get in the paddock too early. If it's wet, you can stay off it, and you know that it's got some urea under there.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a big part of what this might play a role in, is sort of mitigating that risk a little bit of not being able to get out in season, and just knowing that there is some there. And I suppose having a little bit band early, you know, you can then assess how the season's progressing as to how much you might want to put it on in season and that sort of thing as well, which is why I think it can't replace it, the top dressing. But I guess that's, yeah, and I suppose a big part of this project though too is trying to look at that nitrogen use efficiency. So just trying to see, you know, how it might impact, particularly in waterlogged sort of conditions and that sort of thing. So last year I know we saw at our Minanera site, we had a little bit of waterlogging and we had a trial there, and there was better nitrogen use efficiency where we had more deep banded than top dressed in a season like this year, where both the trial sites have been sort of pretty good moisture throughout, but not really any waterlogged conditions. I guess it'll be interesting to sort of see how much of an improvement there can be with that deep banding when conditions have been pretty good. I think there's probably always going to be some losses, but maybe they'll sort of be more minimal this year compared to, yeah, other seasons as well. So I think it probably will be quite seasonal too.
Can you explain to us, Ash, why is the nitrogen release slower when it's banded, and we saw that protein effect rather than yield effect in the two?
Yeah. Yep. So definitely not really an expert in the full chemical process of how sort of everything works and that sort of thing, but kind of simply I think when the urea is banded in the soil, it's in a very tight band, so sort of almost like a sausage, I guess. And so that nitrogen is really concentrated. So it converts, I guess that concentration I think is what slows down that chemical conversion from the ammonium form into the plant available form of nitrate. And so when that conversion process is slowed, yeah, it's just being made available more gradually and sort of acting as a slow release, I guess. That's my understanding.
So anyone got any more questions for Ashley on the deep banding of urea? I've just got a comment here. So yeah, it is quite toxic to the microbes when you're deep banding and can affect soil biology.
Yeah, and that was something we were actually discussing a little bit yesterday too, which, yeah, that probably is a negative to it, I guess. And I suppose the more that you're probably banding there, the more toxic it probably can be to those microbes too. I guess, yeah, it was sort of my understanding that they can sort of, I guess, make, you know, reproduce and once it sort of begins to break down, so that's why the conversion's slow. Yeah, okay, yeah. So as that starts to sort of break down, those microbial sort of populations and things sort of come back up too.
Ash, there was something at the GRDC conference, an update 2 or 3 years ago where they were banding urea below. I think the theory was it was being banded below where the microbial mass was, and
yeah,
they weren't converting as much. So, is that the case here as well?
I'm not 100% sure, I guess. Yeah, we're sort of, I know the two depths that we're at, but where that microbial sort of level is, yeah, I'm not really sure, to be honest.
John, do you just want to unmute yourself and explain your message there?
Yeah, just to say that, just back to Matthew's point about the microbes, it does have an effect, but the other way that prior to this technique that people have tried to delay the slow response of N has been to use nitrification inhibitors, which actually do exactly the same thing, but in a slightly more brutal way. This is a more natural way of putting nitrogen down without adding another chemical into the soil, but the microbes actually get over it, and it just delays their access to the N because it's in a concentrated band.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments on deep banding urea? Well, thank you very much, Ashley, for your presentation and having a great chat there.